Joining us on the agenda today, we have Mike Morrison. He's running for Chelan County Sheriff. Tomorrow, we will talk to the incumbent, Brian Burnett. So kind of today and tomorrow, we get to focus on this Chelan County Sheriff's race. Later on the half hour, later on in the hour, we'll get a chance to talk with East Wenatchee Mayor Jerry Lee Crawford, who is here once a month. We'll get a little update on East Wenatchee business. Deputy Mike Morrison, he is president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association and running for the seat. Let's maybe start real quick. Don't want to have to take up too much time, but real quick on the background. You're again president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association. A little bit more on your law enforcement career background.
Thanks, Dave. So 16 plus years in law enforcement. This January will be 17 years for me. Come from a law enforcement family. My mom was one of the first female officers here in Washington State. My dad's still a K-9 officer. My cousin's a sergeant. My uncle was the elected sheriff for Thurston County. And I have some family in the military. My sister and brother-in-law just retired from the Marine Corps. So during that 16 plus years, I've been a school resource officer, field training officer. So I train new recruits coming out into the agency. And I've also been an instructor here locally and at the academy, so I teach for the advanced class and basic class for driving. And in addition to that, I've been on the search and rescue team, Swift Water Rescue Team, High Angle Rope Rescue Team. I was a member of Okanagan County's SWAT team, and I've just been enjoying law enforcement, loving it, getting every single opportunity I can to grow, get that personal experience. And I can say I've done more than most up to this point in my career, and always like to challenge myself. In addition to the association stuff, I like to keep up on that labor law information as well.
Let's dive into why you decided to run for sheriff.
Same as I did when I first came out. We had division within our workplace, which has become more and more public now that we're shedding some more light on, and I'm glad to see that it is coming to light because you have seen some internal issues being addressed. So they're trying to make efforts to correct it. And the lawsuits have been huge. I mean, we're over $2 million paid out so far. We have another federal suit coming up here the spring of 2023, which was, continued. It was supposed to go here during the middle of this campaign season. It got pushed out. And I called them out and said, hey, you don't see East Wenatchee PD or Douglas County or Wenatchee PD getting sued. I mean, I've heard the claim that, this is normal, agencies get sued. Yes, but most agencies don't pay out, and locally it just doesn't happen. This isn't the norm. And I want to see us get the focus back to law enforcement, not politics, not personal agendas. At times we have 4 to 5 guys out on the road, and that's just not sufficient enough to properly represent the citizens of Chelan County. So we need to get that focus back in there, start honoring our contracts, and do law enforcement. We want to see answers, not excuses.
We're talking with Mike Morrison. He is running for Chelan County Sheriff, and I've looked at both of your campaign websites, campaign materials, and kind of analyzing what incumbent Sheriff Brian Burnett's focus is on, and that's kind of focusing on a growing threat of drugs and violence, and really focusing on the threat that may be tied to mental health issues in our community, legislative changes, working on collaboration, regional approach. Your campaign materials, I look at your website, really focuses on morale issues. You've talked a lot about the surveys that have been done that highlight that concern, and also about the lawsuits, patrol issues, and as president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association, you see kind of a lot of your concerns raised from that, and of course the deputies as the association president that you represent. So you kind of see two different approaches here. I see a lot of what you focus on in your campaign, and I see a lot of what the incumbent focuses on his campaign. So let's maybe have you give you a chance to talk a little bit more about the morale issues. You both have great websites, very beautifully done, and a lot of very heartfelt sentiment expressed on both of them. Let's talk a little bit more about your concerns about morale.
Yeah, so morale, the main issues is that we've had 46 employees leave here since 2014. That's more than half our agency. So when you see that the main focus of why they left was morale or the way they were treated, you have to start wondering, when you're looking at nationwide, agencies are struggling to recruit. And you can't have half your agency leaving simply because they're not treated well. Most are leaving nationwide because law enforcement's tough, and the environment's tough, and the litigious nature of you being questioned on every single call is tough. It shouldn't be your agency that's killing your morale to be a law enforcement officer, and that is a huge focus, because we're talking about needing more guys out on the road and more gals out on the road enforcing those laws, and we need to focus on retention, and the retention directly links back to morale. So if we can fix these internal issues, we have a stronger force. We're working together. We have more people out on the road. And I can tell you right now, as an officer who's actually worked the road during these new changes in the law, dealing with these mental health issues, the new drug crisis, I see there are answers out there. We can still do law enforcement, but we need more people. And we need the ability to work together, and that's what I would say that the morale is going to help bring back. We're going to have more people wanting to come here to Chelan County, more people wanting to live here, work, and address these issues of, our mental health crisis and our drug crisis and also our in-house crisis. So we can come up with solutions, but you need bodies on the road.
We're talking to Mike Morrison. He is running for Chelan County Sheriff. As someone who might support your opponent, looking at a lot of the focus of some of your campaign material, who might dismiss those concerns as this is just the Deputy Sheriff's Association president sticking up for his gals and his guys out there in the field, and they want better equipment. They're feeling like they're not being treated right. The focus of the sheriff is elsewhere. How do you respond to that? Because there's a lot of folks that say the sheriff is doing a great job. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I want those tough questions. I want his supporters to come back and challenge me on these topics, because I'm going to remind them this money we're paying out is your money, is the taxpayers' dollars. We're not asking for better equipment. We're not asking for more pay. We're asking for reasonable treatment within the workplace, and we want the funding and the money that comes from taxpayers to stay focused on law enforcement and not making other people rich. I mean, the joke should not be Chelan County's made more millionaires than Berkshire Hathaway. That should not be the focus of Chelan County Sheriff's Office. The focus should be our money, the taxpayer dollars, go back to fund law enforcement in the community. And my focus, which it has been for almost 17 years now, is serving the community and being responsible and being accountable for actions. If we make a mistake, I understand. But these have been the same mistakes that have been made for 12 years, and I hear a lot of the blame going back to previous Sheriff Mike Harum. Mike Harum's been gone for over 12 years. You can no longer shift the focus and the blame back over on a previous administration. These are errors that are happening right now. They keep being repeated, and it's not being duplicated at any other agency. So I understand that my opponent has done a lot of things that have been positive, but the negatives are definitely outweighing. The focus has drifted from serving the community, and it's become very costly. It's going to continue to be costly with this next federal suit coming up. And how expensive is it when we're trying to replace 46, even more employees leaving, when we're having a hard time recruiting anyways? So that's why I'm focused. We have a good environment in most contexts, but we need to address the issues that are bold.
I want to ask you about right now in this particular instance. Sadly, Wenatchee Police Department had two relatively close-to-close fatal police-involved shootings, and so we have what's called the North Central Washington Special Investigations Unit. The state has created what's called the OII, Office of Internal Investigations, and they're supposed to be up and running like July of 2023. I think they're kind of behind pace. And as I understand, it wouldn't necessarily mean that the North Central Washington Special Investigations Unit would have to be disbanded, but I wonder what your thoughts are if you were to be successful as in the general election here and elected the next sheriff of Chelan County. Would you rather see this OII take over police-involved shootings in this region once that OII is in place? Because right now, critics of the NCWSIU say the setup is that each of the agencies, other than the one involved, do all the investigating, and that's how we're currently set up. And this agency has been charged with kind of taking over that process next summer.
Correct. Well, also, I mean, you're going to see that there's going to be challenges when this comes online. I understand what the voters want. They want to see more transparency in how we do our job, and I don't disagree with that. I do believe that we do a pretty good job here locally. We've created a pretty good environment, and that issues do come up, and I don't have any problem with us being held accountable for our actions and explaining what we did. I do see a problem with taking away our own local investigative unit, because I think they've done a very good job. Even with the reviews I've seen back from the Attorney General's office has shown that we've followed the procedures to the most part, and if there was an area that we did not check that box, that we've at least given a reasoning like, hey, we did not do this because of this factor. I think one where we were talking about was that they were supposed to give updates to the families involved before a press release was done, and in some of those instances, the families have said, we don't want this press release, we don't want to be notified by you guys, do what you need to do. So I saw that as one of the boxes we did get dinged against, but overall, we are doing way better than we did in the past. We're trying to hold ourselves accountable to the public we serve. No officer wants to be involved in an officer-involved shooting. It's a horrible situation for the officer involved, the family of the victim, and the accountability needs to be there. I would like to see more of a partnership between the two programs that are being, one being used right now and one coming online. I think that would be a more effective way to have those two investigations going. But we'll continue to work through it and, make do with the rules that are coming on there. But I think our investigative unit locally has done an excellent job, is doing an excellent job, and has been held accountable.
Yeah, a recent audit, and this has just been reported on, found just some very, very minor, and you could probably chalk them up to some clerical things, as you mentioned. That was my understanding as well. They were some had to do with issues of notifying in advance family members that a press release was a weekly press release was coming out. As a member of the media, we see these, and it's routinely. There's nothing new to report here.
Yes.
That does get a little bit frustrating with the pace of those investigations, but that's what this most recent audit found from cases back in 2020. Want to take our break here, come back with more. We're talking with Mike Morrison. We're going to tell you the ballots come out in the Chelan County Sheriff's race. Well, actually for every race here on your general election ballot next Tuesday. So in about a week from now, you should start to see those ballots showing up. The Chelan County Sheriff's race. Mike Morrison is running president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association and challenging longtime incumbent Brian Burnett. He's going to be our guest coming up on the program tomorrow. So today and tomorrow, we get a chance to talk about some of the key issues in the Chelan County Sheriff's race. We'll come back with more on the agenda.
With Dave Bernstein.
And we're talking to Mike Morrison. Deputy Mike Morrison is running for Chelan County Sheriff. And want to talk about this. The question of faith or religion has come up in this race. I don't think I've ever seen that in the Chelan County Sheriff's races over the years that I've been here. I've been in this area. I've been in Chelan County now since 1983. And so should that be some sort of litmus test in a sheriff's race? I just wanted to get your observations on that. Not that it's a good thing or a bad thing, but just your observations on that it's come up in this race.
I was certainly surprised to see that my faith would be one of the bigger issues that's come up during this campaign. I figured we would have been on other topics, but in talking with a lot of the public, I get their concern. There is concerns that the church somehow dictates us or influences us in how we do our job, and that's just not correct. I mean, our faith and our profession is separate. I know others have questioned, well, how can you be a Christian and say that? I was like, well, the truth of the matter is that we enforce laws, we have codes that we follow, and we follow case law as well. And true, my faith is always going to be there in the back, influencing some of my decisions, but overall it does not dictate how I do my job. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I will not denounce my faith based off of that, but I also want the people within our community to know when I put on the uniform, Mike Morrison goes away and Deputy Morrison and or Sheriff Morrison is now there, and I'm going to treat everyone equally with respect and dignity, even if you don't believe in the same faith as I do, or you don't go to the same church, or you don't have the same views. It's irrelevant. I'm out there enforcing the law and making sure that you feel safe and comfortable within our community. And outside of that, I mean, I've never brought my religious faith and my background into my job. And up to this point, I would imagine that almost 99% of our community had no idea where I went to church or that I was Christian outside of work. So when I was at work, it just never came up. And if that's what it takes to let the community know that they will be treated equally and fairly and with dignity and respect, whether they believe the same thing as I do, I will get that message out there. But no, I am a Christian. It is important to me in my life, but I understand that there's a separation between when I'm at work and what I do in my private time.
Do you think there's some folks in the community that are trying to hold that against you or your opponent where you go to church? Because I've wondered that. I look at social media just like anybody else.
Yes. I mean, that has been a question. I know that people have been frustrated when I told them that I was attending Grace City Church. My family and I are currently not attending that just because of the political upheaval it seemed like it was causing within the church. It was becoming a distraction of why I go to church, and it seemed to be more causing division. That I didn't want that for anyone else going to church, and I didn't want my professional life and my personal life crashing like that. So to see that was disappointing, and I wanted to make sure that the public knew that I was an officer that was going to represent them no matter what, and that my religion did not have anything to do with my profession. But disappointing to see that it came up and that people had that feeling, thinking that somehow that citizens within this community would be treated differently just because they didn't go to Grace City Church. They didn't believe in Grace City's message.
Let me ask you this. This was a race that was always going to be moving on to the general election, but because it's a partisan race, we stick it on the primary ballot, so it gives, in this case, the two opponents kind of a chance to see, kind of where everyone stands. It's a little bit of a, wet your thumb, kind of stick it up in the air, feel which way the wind is blowing. So you had some ground to make up. Let me ask you, as you're courting voters, trying to kind of change that, you came in second in the primary, but that just gives you an indication of, how much ground you might need to make up, what the message you need to get out there. So what was your plan moving from the August primary through the campaign season to get some more folks on your side and say, hey, I want to vote for Mike Morrison?
We were very happy with the primary results. I mean, I came out of nowhere. That was after 2 months of campaigning, coming into this as, who's Mike Morrison? I was beyond happy with it. And in going out there and talking to more members of the community, most had just told me, well, we didn't know who you were, or we didn't know that you were in the race, or that, hey, we've known your opponent for this amount of years. We went to school. But when we started delivering the message, people were receptive to it. They liked it. We have not changed our message at all. It's still on point. And as I've gotten out of more platforms and gotten to talk about the issues and where I stand and what my view would be for law enforcement continuing forward, I think the public's receiving it well. We're continuing to get growing support, and we're going to continue to push forward until elected sheriff here in November.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left here, but let's ask you if you are successful in November and move into the sheriff's post, what would be some of the first things you would be focusing on in a Morrison administration?
Getting our focus back to patrol, making sure our staffing is at the maximum levels, and then starting to branch out and give our detectives more resources too. I mean, they're down 2 positions. As we've been reading in the paper, we've been getting hammered with large instances that take a lot of time investigating, and we're burning our guys out. So we need to get more support in there. And once we've stabilized investigations and our patrol unit, which I find to be the backbone and the foundation of law enforcement, we can start expanding out past that. I definitely know that we need to get our resources more focused on patrolling up there on Lake Chelan and other bodies of water within Chelan County. We've had 6 deaths so far on the water, and we've had no one out on the water all summer. We haven't written any tickets. And I should rephrase that. We have had some out in the water, but we certainly have not come anywhere close to hitting the marks that are expected on us. Our traffic enforcement unit has almost been MIA in the amount of fatalities and crashes that we've seen. I mean, we just saw a 100-acre fire down there in Malaga. This is why we need those guys out on the road and try to transition the focus away from us being training focused, and we want to be in the best in the state in training. I get it. I'm an instructor. We're going to continue to do training, but we don't need to do 10 times as much training as other agencies in the state. The focus has to be serving our community, getting the focus back to where it needs to be at, solve crimes, improve the quality of life, and make sure that protecting and serving comes number one as our priority, and that the community is happy with our service. At this time, based off my conversations, I do not believe the majority of the county is happy with the direction we're headed when it actually comes to serving and protecting.
What about recruiting? You say you're down these positions. What about recruiting officers? Why couldn't we have already done that?
Our reputation, retention. I mean, when we have the amount of employees that are leaving, my focus would be on retaining, because a lot of these employees went to other agencies or they went to other state entities doing the same exact thing they're doing for us. We cannot replace that kind of experience, that kind of training, and that kind of connections with the community by bringing on a new officer. I get that there has to be a balance. We need new officers that are going to replace our officers when they retire and they leave, but we shouldn't be running people out, and we need that balance of young, up-and-coming officers and those that are more tenured, experienced, have the connections with the community to balance out and make sure that we sail right. So I'm going to focus on retention, making sure that people want to stay here. And I believe if we deal with the internal issues, that our reputation of not being so suitable of an agency to go work at will be overcome, and that people will want to come here to Chelan County because we live in the best county in the state. We have good equipment, we have decent pay, and we need to make sure that the focus of our reputation of being toxic and hostile is eliminated and eradicated, and then we'll get new employees coming in and wanting to come here.
Well, Mike Morrison wants your vote for Chelan County Sheriff, and you can go to website and social media for sure. I'm going to have you let folks know where they can find you online right now.
It'll be Mike Morrison for Sheriff, and we also have our Facebook account up and have Mike Morrison for Sheriff at gmail.com if you want to email me any questions. But please come out and check out our webpage, check out our Facebook page, email me directly. And if we can't meet there, I will try to meet in person. We're still delivering signs. We're still welcoming donations to our campaign, and we've appreciated all the support we've gotten here over the last couple of weeks. It's really ramped up, and we're going to bring it home.
All right. So a lot of times a name and a 4 in the office is either F-O-R or the number 4. How are you doing it?
We did F-O-R.
Okay, Mike Morrison for Sheriff.com, right? Mm-hmm. All righty. And in the social media as well. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. And we're 27 days away. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't get a clear-cut winner on election night. So we'll see how this all shapes out. Probably here within the next 30 days or so, we'll get an indication of who's going to win the race for sheriff in Chelan County. And Mike Morrison is hoping his name comes out on top. Thanks for coming in to join us today.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All righty. And as I mentioned, we'll